you. Are you listening to the question? Or
Yes,
should be
yes.
repeated?
Yeah, so I wanted to understand about the health correlation and stress. So there are some researchers in Harvard, they say that stress has sometimes positive and sometimes negative health impact.
Yes, I mean, when the positive effect is that it helps our body to fight in stress situation and survive. And the negative effect is that sometimes it causes lots of bad habits and health problem that will cause a professional stress.
Mhm. Okay, thank you. It was interesting talk.
Thank you.
Thank you too.
No other questions. Yeah? Then we are going to next report. Natalia Boyko, Elena Moros. Present somebody? No. But present Hanna Ropalo. Do you want to make your report?
Do you hear me?
Yes, we are.
Yes.
Oh, yes. Thank you. Let me share my screen.
Please, you can possibility to share your screen. Good, we see you.
So, hello, my name is Hanna Ropala, and I presented to you the work analysis of the effectiveness of the successive concessions method to solve the problem of diversification. The subject of the paper is multi-criteria problems that arise when modeling the complex diversification of the centralized pharmacy network. The purpose of the work is to analyze solving the three criteria problem of pharmacy network diversification by the method of successive concessions in the MoMLeT package. The result obtained a study of the processes of complex diversification of the pharmacy network by building portfolio models and solving the relevant multi-criteria problems by the successive concessions method. We presented one of the tasks of complex diversification, which is formalized as a portfolio model of optimizing the distribution of finances between the outlets of the centralized pharmacy network. The model of the optimal portfolio considered in the paper has a composition of the vector objective function consistencies of three criteria. The first two criteria correspond to the classical portfolio theory. Risk criterion, which decreases some criterion, the profitability of the portfolio, which is desirable to increase. The third criterion, entropy, is introduced by us as a value that characterizes the level of diversification of the portfolio and the assessment of the diversity of its components, which the pharmacy network is trying to increase in its activities. So we have such multi-criteria problem of quadratic programming. The solution of problem is a vector, the optimal plan for the distribution of financial resources of the centralized pharmacy network between outlets. Solving multi-criteria problems of complex diversification will be considered in detail on the example of the successive concessions method. In the first stage, we determine the optimal value of the first most important entropy criterion in the field of acceptable solutions. In the second stage, we solve the conditional optimization problem by the next most important risk criterion, adding to the conditions that determine the acceptable solutions, the conditions for the deviation of the first entropy criterion from the found optimal value by entropy, no more than acceptable concessions delta 1 greater 0. So we have the formalization of the second stage. The optimal solution according to the second criterion risk is obtained. The procedure is repeated for the next most important criterion sum, adding to the conditions that determine the acceptable solutions, the conditions for the deviation of the first criterion, entropy, and the second criterion, risk, from the found optimal values, entropy, risk, at more than the values of the acceptable concessions, delta 1 greater 0 and delta 2 greater 0. The solution obtained in the third stage is the solution of the three criteria conditional optimization problem. Experiments with the models were conducted on real data of one of the pharmacy chains operating in Zaporizhia. All calculations were performed in the MATLAB package. Here are some useful definitions for analyzing the effectiveness of solving the three criteria problem of diversification of the pharmacy network by the successive concessions method. Let's consider the parameters that affect the results of solving the three criteria problem of diversification by the successive concessions method. Therefore, the first parameter of the method is the order of solving optimization problems according to one of the three criteria. The vector of deviation values in the second parameter of the method. After solving the first one criteria problem, the system of constraints is supplemented by a new criterion, which limits the deviation from the found of the optimal solution and the previous stages. The number of pharmacies in the network, which determines the size of the problem, is the third parameter of the method. The fourth parameter concerns the initial approximation and accuracy of the method. Therefore, to analyze the effectiveness of the method of concessions of certain parameters, it is necessary to perform 4 steps that meet the objectives of this paper. Step 1. Research of advantages of the offered three criterion model of diversification of a pharmacy network concerning classical two criterion model of the portfolio theory. So we have two criteria problems, which we denote according to the sequence of criteria: sum risk and risk sum and sum risk. The result of solving these problems for a small network, the number of pharmacies in this network is 5, which estimates of the main parameters are given in table. According to the data, we can see that the best result among the two criteria modifications is achieved for the model risk sum. Therefore, we will consider three criteria problems, which we will also denote according to the sequence of consideration of criteria by the method of concessions: entropy sum risk and entropy risk sum. The results of solving three criteria problems with estimates of the main parameters are given in the table, where an efficient modification risk sum entropy is also given for comparison. According to the estimates given in the table, it can be stated that the entropy risk sum has the best result. Step 2, construction of the dominance relation on the set of criteria. As can be seen from figures, the visualization of solutions using computer modeling eliminates the previously mentioned disadvantage of the concessions method, that the result does not necessarily belong to a subset of Pareto efficient solutions, and therefore requires verification of its membership compromises. Thanks to the graphical interpretation, the check is performed automatically. Step 3, determination the area of stability in the space of the parameters of the concessions method. Construct an area of stability in the space of parameters of the concessions method, delta 1 greater 0 and delta 2 greater 0. The color indicates the end conditions of the algorithm. Step 4, evaluation the effectiveness of the method for tasks of different sizes. Let us evaluate the efficiency of the method application for networks of different size. N is 5, 33, and 55, and problems with a different composition of the vector objective function. Similar experiments were performed with medium and large networks, the results of which are presented in tables. For the problem with the objective function of the model entropy risk sum at n is 33 and 65, the value of exit flag is 0. This indicates that the maximum value of the function of iteration estimate was exceeded, but in no case was the exit flag value less than 0 when the function did not match some solution. Therefore, there is always a solution for the considered problems, and its belonging to the acceptable area is checked graphically thanks to the developed software in the MATLAB package. So, evaluation of the effectiveness of the method was performed on 4 parameters. For the first, the parameters of the method is the sequence of solving optimization problem for one of 3 criteria. The experiments were conducted on different arrangements of risk, income, and entropy, as well as comparison of the result of solving classical 2 criteria tasks with 3 criteria. The second parameter of the method is the vector of deviation values, which is determined by the size of a segment. There are a number of pharmacies in the network that determine the size of the problem, the third parameter of the method. The fourth parameter concerns the initial approximation and accuracy of the method. The acceptable sets and sets of parity optimal portfolios were found graphically for all cases of parameter values. The results of computer simulation and numerical analysis performed in this paper successive concessions will provide investors with an appropriate tool. Decision support will be useful for automating pharmacy business, process networks, risk management, analysis of market data to improve the efficiency functioning. Among the areas of further research, a comparative analysis of the effectiveness of other methods solving diversification problems and taking into account the dynamic factors that affect the degree of the risk. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Maybe not loud enough, but maybe somebody want to ask questions.
I have a question on a clarification. I'd like to understand, in this multi-objective optimization, you have risk and you have a diversity measure entropy. The risk term was also based on diversification by Markowitz model, and I would like to understand in what sense entropy is different to the covariance-based risk measure.
The criteria entropy is introduced by us as a value that characterizes the level of diversification of the portfolio and the assessment of the diversity of its components.
And how does it relate to the risk by diversification, which is the covariance in the risk measure?
I don't hear.
I think that the risk is also a diversification measure.
Let I show you model.
Mm-hmm.
Can you do your microphone louder a lot?
I'm sorry, but I can't.
I can hear. It's good.
In this model, you can see the risk is and entropy is to the maximum.
Yes, but the risk is also based on covariance, and it's also a diversification based measure. So it might be interesting to look at the relationship between risk and diversity.
Is it correlated?
It's interesting to see.
Yeah. It is, of course, different, but I think they should be anti-correlated. Maybe you can have a look, and that can be maybe used in the optimization. When you have a strong anti-correlation, you can predict one by the other. It's more a remark. So maybe to look at the paper of Markowitz, how risk was defined based on diversification, and then compared to entropy. It would be an interesting additional remark about your work. Otherwise, I think it's very interesting to add additional objectives to the risk expected profit portfolio theory. Also sustainability I've seen in recent work by Ralf Steuer in Georgia.
Think about this question. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Maybe somebody else want to ask questions. Please share your screen. Thank you. And if not another questions, we are going to next report. Natalia Boyko, Elena Moroz, comparative analysis of regression regularization method for life expectancy prediction. Absent. Okay. Oleg Veres, Pavlo Ilchuk, Olga Kots. Anybody? No. Then next speaker, Natalia Gretiev, Tatiana Shostakevich, Yulia Sheikha.
Dear participants, hello. Let us share
Okay.
the screen now. Okay. Do you see this?
Yes, we see.
The classy one, right? Let me first give you a couple of prior concerns. The point is that the team of us, we are from the philological sphere, right? I have got my PhD in translation studies, and the interest of the research we are doing, and we are trying to somehow discuss and put forward, that is how to incorporate different computer technologies, corpus technologies in translation studies, right? Thus, we are most interested in fiction translation, especially bilingual translation, that is English and the Ukrainian. My name is Natalia Gretiev, and I am having the presentation on behalf of Tatiana Shostakevich and Yulia Sheikha. To talk about the central notion of us, that is the corpus of texts. And we work with linguistic corpus. It has some features that distinguish it from ordinary collections of digital text, right? And the basic feature is the machine readable and representativeness. We rely on the works and the references.
Not hearing you.
Okay. What about right now?
Yeah, okay.
Thus, the main problem in corpus linguistics is the creation of means of automatic or at least automated text according to different criteria. In this bilingual text, we're interested in morphological, orthoepic, semantic, syntactic, and other features. However, we cannot only rely on these key notions, right, or keyness method of investigation. Before this, it takes some time to process this philologically oriented approach is needed. Only after that we can have some structuring of the text. Thus, with us, so we paid attention to certain markup parameters, right? Thus, the process of tag annotation is to attribute to the text and the components special text. That is, we talk about external, extra-linguistic, structural, and linguistic features. The distinction between annotation and structural markup of the corpus data is based on the definition of annotation offered by Leach, according to which the process of annotation of corpus data is the adding of interpreted linguistic information. And that is actually what we are doing. We are actually interpreting this linguistic information for the sake of further digitalization in a way. Thus, the term interpreted linguistic information means an annotation that is to some extent a product of the understanding of the text by the human mind. Markup provides relatively objective, verified information about the parts of the corpus and the structure of each text. Linguistic annotation and corpus linguistics is traditionally interpreted as any linguistic information about linguistically relevant units of the data presented in a formal code, adding formalized linguistic information into the digital text and presence of such information in the text. To talk about a specific case study, thus we were focused on morphological markup, syntactic markup, semantic markup, and anaphoric markup. During the creation of the corpus, several procedures and programs are used, such as tokenization, lemmatization, stemming, and parsing. Compiling a corpus and its use can be implemented according to the model: annotation, abstraction, and analysis. The first stage involves the collection, standardization, segmentation, processing, and often manual checking of text. At the second stage, the research topic is selected, the parameters are determined, and the corresponding fragment is removed from the corpus. At the final stage, the hypothesis is constructed and examined, specific rules and systematized structures are researched. Thus, we have certain constraints. In here, we talk about texts which should be chronologically limited. We talk about texts which should be limited in the genre, and we talk about texts that should be thematically limited. We talk about texts which should be homogeneous in the author's style, since we are concentrated on the author's specific style and its rendition in translation. In our case, we're talking about the English original and the Ukrainian translation. The results and discussion. In our study, priority has been given to the vocabulary of the original text and its translation, and with the help of the automatic processing of the corpus and statistical calculations, several important characteristics have been defined, which can form the basis for clarifying the writer's individual style and help to conclude the aesthetic significance of the original text and its translation. From the point of view of the quantitative linguistic analysis of text, several problems have been defined which refer to the stylistic aspects of research of vocabulary of the given text. In particular, that is the volume of the text, that is the total number of words in the text, volume of vocabulary, number of word forms, the volume of the vocabulary of lexemes, the number of lemmatization words in the text, hapax legomena, that is, these are words that occur in the sample once and their frequency equals to 1, the number of words with a frequency less than 10, and the number of letters, number of sentences, number of content words, number of functional words. And we come to certain results and discussions. Thus, based on these statistic data, it is possible to conclude or to calculate vocabulary richness, the average repeatability, exclusivity index, dictionary concentration index, lexical density index, automatic readability index, noun phrases index, verb phrases index, degree of nominality, verb index, logical coherence index, and embolism index. Then, morphological markup of the corpus of short stories has been performed. The classical division of words into parts of speech has been applied. And for each part of speech is frequency in the text, and the author's vocabulary or register has been automatically obtained. The most frequent words in the original text are functional words, which equal to 5.2% of the vocabulary. They function most actively in the text and cover almost a third of it, that is 30.7%. Pronouns are also frequently used in the text, that is 3% of the vocabulary, and about 13% of the text. Adverbs have approximately the same percentage in the text and the vocabulary, that is 9% and 10% respectively. And numerals, that is about 1%. That is in the whole version of the paper. Then nouns sum up to 22% and 39%, verbs 19% and 26%, and adjectives 8% and 16% in the text of the writer's vocabulary. We paid attention to Jack London's individual style, and from the translation studies point of view, that is important for the sake of proper rendition of the original text, right? So that is actually the pre-stage for the translator to deal with the translation itself. Then the most frequent words in the target text, that is in the translated Ukrainian version, are the functional parts of speech, which have 5.74% of the vocabulary and 25.98% of the text. High frequency is also shown by pronouns, adverbs, and numerals. Nouns in the translation comprise 25.23% and 33.13%. Verbs and adjectives actually show quite high results as well. That is the part of the speech frequency of the vocabulary and source and target text is shown in here on the chart, right? Just to compare, so we have suppose now 10,415 nouns, right, and 9,314 in the translation. Later on, we will be able to talk about the loss on the lexical level in the translation. Thus, if for the original writer, nouns played specific role, right? So that was the dominant feature of his individual style, actually got lost in the translation, right? It goes the same with verbs, adjectives, and so on. However, that might be some objective and subjective reasons for this loss. Later on, it will demand close philological approach and analysis. Thus, nouns in brief, right? Nouns, verbs, and adjectives are the most frequently used. The relative number in the vocabulary, on the contrary, exceeds the relative number of both structure and target, source and target text. These parts of speech present the richness of the vocabulary of the source and target text. And also the ratio confirms that the nominal character of the individual style of the original text was preserved in the translated text. In here we have the comparative table of certain quantitative relations between parts of speech. Suppose we talk about lexical density index, which is almost the same in the original text and in the translation, right? And what is quite striking, where is the difference? That is suppose logical coherence index, right? So later on, it again gives the grounds for close philological analysis to look where was this coherence distorted, what was the reason, what were those objective reasons of the language differences within the structure, right, and the system of the languages, or was it the translator's individual choice? And a couple of summing up notions. Thus, we were talking about Jack London's collection, The Son of the Wolf, which is the part of the broader analysis, right? So many more original texts and translations have been analyzed in this respect. In the study, the priority has been given to the lexical content of source and target text. However, later on, within certain other projects, we paid attention separately to metaphors, right, to key images and so on of the same author. The paper presents a statistical analysis of selected works by Jack London and their translations into Ukrainian. And to sum up, indices of vocabulary richness, exclusivity for the text and the vocabulary, the concentration of the vocabulary do not differ significantly, which is a positive result, right? The most frequent in the target text are functional words. The epithetization index both in source and target text does not differ significantly. That is 3.32 and 3.48. And therefore, the translator managed to preserve the saturation of the text with figurative phrases. However, the translator were of a male gender, and it is also interesting to compare male and female translation in respect of these figurative phrases, which is the perspective of the study. The index of verb phrases in the target text has a slightly bigger ratio. The degree of aggression is equal in source and target text. This confirms the fact that the nominal character of the original text is accurately reproduced in translation. Thank you so much for your patience and your attention.
Thank you very much for your report. Interesting report. And any questions? No, no questions. Then, starting from this moment, we will ask who else want to make a report, and with order of.
I want if I can.
Okay, Oksana Boyachuk want to make report. Yeah,
Yeah.
please.
One moment, I share my screen. Can you see my screen? My presentation?
Not this moment, no.
No. Moment.
Try again.
Wait, okay, I try. I have some problem with connection because we have a bad weather. Try. And now?
No.
No?
No, black screen.
Sorry.
Sorry, may I start before you when you check your connection?
First,
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much.
Please try you share your screen.
Yeah, I will try. I will to do the same. Okay. Yeah.
Oh.
Do you see my screen?
I see.
Yeah, I'm start. Okay. Let me introduce, ladies and gentlemen, our research on information system for quality control of polyethylene production in a circular economy done by Mykola Baran, Oleg Kuzmin, Борислава Бублик, Valentina Panasiuk, and Христина Ліщинська. The main purpose of this study is creating a quality control system task for notification control management of automatic system using remote access and artificial intelligence system. Research objectives are to consider the main elements of the basic quality control system and existing system and to determine the possibility of their use in creating a comprehensive quality control system. To consider the engineering and software solution to create a quality control system for polyethylene production without reference to the platform, to define the necessary function and commands of the system, to describe the system requirements for the development of quality control system, and to determine the necessary software for system implementation. And now the quality control system is a holistic set of the process, resources, relevant producers, organization, providing opportunities to maintain strong links between the level of management and operating enterprises at all levels of the sales and production, as well as the overall quality management of production and services. And to ensure the requirement high quality of products or services, you need a clear management system of this quality, which includes scientific and technical advances, focus on market demands, and simulated the consequently work of the entire team at the enterprise. Among the most effective and popular systems used in the chemical industry are following: Semantic PP button panel, Yokohama touch panel, and Harmony STU web touch panel, which are presented at that fair. The presented and function Polytechnic quality system control is based on the HMI interface. It is necessary to determine the main attributes and functions such as graphical interface, messaging, production mode with the use of the quality control, database of identification, diagnostic mode, a database for reporting of the session of the system. For the design of the information system for quality control of polyethylene production, one of the important requirements is to provide recommendation based on the principle of building a decision support system and methodology of system analysis. From the top of the goal tree, we represent the main goal, some branches, and divide the main goal for their corresponding sub-goals. In this slide, we have the context diagram in EDF0 shown in this figure. In the next slides, we have in the figure the decomposition of the context diagram. Here is presented the EDF0 decomposition diagram determining axis 11, and which is shown in this figure. The EDF quality control decomposition diagram shown in this figure. Comparison of the main characteristic of a CMS system shown in this table. Now, in the next slide, we have the comparison of the main characteristic of framework shown in this table. And after the detailed analysis of effectiveness of CMM system and comparison then with ability to system to conjunction with HTML plus CSS plus GSM with part of the backend in Python or PHP. Comparison of main characteristic of framework shown in this table, and after the detailed analysis of framework and comparison them the previous tools, we build an information system is found for they are highly effectively and relatively easy to use. For further work, this front end of the system, the React.js framework was closed, and for the main work related to the basic Express.js, which is connected with material UI data package and additional Express routing tools. An image of the structure of the Express.js framework based on Node.js is up on the Visual Studio environment is presented in this figure. In the figure, we can see the PostgreSQL database that was selected for the data connection and storage operation with together with the ORM connecting with provide good performance with the system's performance of this necessary function. Here, we can see the database that is created to store information about user of the system and the source data of the production source which is tied to this user. As mentioned above, the query of the database is performed using the ORM technology and the database itself is created by using PostgreSQL. This figure shows the main menu navigation. Here we can see an production roadmap. In this figure, we can see the filling data for normal mode and especially information, the main menu used for important provide understanding the stage of production. And on this slide, we have the figure that we can see output of quality indicator. And below here, we can see the filling this data for diagnostic mode. As a result, we can see, sorry?
And then reconnect again.
Okay.
Let's try to reconnect.
Okay. I'm finishing after reconnection. Okay.